The Romans came, they saw, they didn't really stay long. We've only got a couple of examples of what the actual Roman town layout would have looked like. The first one is, well, it's the streets. The streets haven't changed all that much since Roman times. Yes, it's a big mess right now because it's a car park, but the road layout is pretty similar to how it would have been back then. There was a road here, a road there, roads crossed here. And it is easy to get lost in what this place would have been like with a little bit of imagination, isn't it? But there's another clue to what this place would have been like in Roman times. If we drop into Google Earth, let's see if I can try and keep up with my pointing skills here, which are questionable at the best of times. If we zoom in on this corner here, so this is the northeastern corner of the car park, you can just about see that change of direction of those roads. There's that road coming in and going along there. And we've got this road here, this road going there. If we go back to the bird's eye view, these two roads meet at a right angle. They cross each other. What do we call the place where the roads cross each other? A Roman crossroads. Bingo! Here's the remains of a Roman altar found at this spot right here. And the reason why I am excited about this is that shows us exactly how the Roman town was laid out. And we're looking at the northwest corner. Let's just tidy this up a bit. We'll move the cars away and reveal the beautiful Roman road beneath them. So this is where those roads met. Here's where they met. That's the intersection of those two roads. Here's that road, which is still intact, still in use today, and that road. And so if we continue this trend, if we imagine these roads continuing, but a lot less potholed, we end up with this. Okay, so this is where the crossroads was, this point right here. Then that road would have continued over the river somewhere around there, and connected up to the rest of the Roman road network. And this one would have continued on its merry way and ended up somewhere near here. That road still exists, by the way. It's called Cooling Street, ironically, and this road is also still in existence today. Running along the western edge of Winchester, it's called, well, the Avenue. So we're basically following these roads. I'm following these roads backwards. It's like reverse engineering the Roman town to see where everything would have sat. And yes, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this, but trust me, this is infinitely easier to follow on screen. Alright, so here's our crossroads, the center of Roman Winchester. And from here, we can see pretty much the entire town layout. This is where the Forum was. This is where the Basilica was. Here's the temple complex, the theater over here. And this is the main gate into the town. Oh, and this is the other gate into the town. This is the other one. And then beyond that is the west gate, which is, oh, look, it's still intact. Alright, so if we pan across to the eastern side of the town, well, that's where the city walls were located. Those city walls that no longer exist apart from that one small section. So this is the entrance to the Roman town. This is the west gate, still intact, and from here, we entered into the Roman town. Past the Forum, went down this road, and then up the other road and out the north gate. This road, by the way, is still in existence today. It's called Jury Street. This road is still in existence. It's called High Street, and this road is still in existence. Although it doesn't continue all the way, this is Great Minster Street. So if you want to walk the Roman streets of Winchester, well, you're most of the way there already, and I hope you've enjoyed today's tour of the Lost Roman city beneath Winchester. In this series, I am making my way around the UK, visiting every county and talking about a bit of its prehistory. Surely I'm missing something here, but actually, there's even more. So as we head east, well, you'll notice we're still underneath the bank now, the potential Iron Age settlement, and you'll notice it carries on going in this direction underneath the railway, and onwards for perhaps another couple of 100 yards until we get to the crossroads. So this is great, but that is where the visual Iron Age journey ends for us. We've been lucky, to be fair. We now have the development of this parchment road and all the housing here, and then back up to where we started via the High Street, all concealing the remainder of our Iron Age settlement. What we call Winchester today was Vena Belgium in the Roman times, because it was the Savota's capital for the Belgi tribe, so clearly Winchester is super old. We have the Iron Age enclosure here. We have Hill first to the south. But how exactly do I find evidence of that Roman civilization that came thereafter? I think I might need some help. Emperor Claudius famously landed in Britain in AD 43. But it was not instant conquer of the whole of the province. They had to either deal with or conquer tribes on an individual basis. One by one they conquered small parts of Britannia, until they got all the way up to Hadrian's Wall, and in the mid-Roman period, even tried to push beyond that. It was not an instantaneous change from Iron Age to Roman as some of the history books like to say. Iron Age practices, building techniques, religion all continued, and in some places throughout the entire Roman period. As a result, a lot of features are not actually known whether they are technically Roman or technically Iron Age. If you look on any historic environment record, you will sometimes find places that will say Iron Age, Roman, because there isn't really a meaningful distinction which one they were. The year is 1966, and some archaeologists are called in to do some work here at this junction of a Tanner Street and Friars Gate. Well, they found the remains of a small temple dedicated to Apona, goddess of fertility and horses. This temple was built around 100 CE. So, this combined with a tiny bit of remaining wall back over on Bridge Street, likely the location of the East Gate, tells us that the Romans extended this settlement much further east than the Iron Age original settlement. The Romans in many ways were a lot like us. They had a lot of the same kinds of things in their towns that we do today. The equivalent of the town hall would probably be the basilica and the forum, which were the main administrative and commercial centers of that town. There were other things like they had the temples for the places of worship. They had market stalls. They had market stores that were things like fast food outlets. They were really very similar to us, okay? So this is the stunning Winchester Cathedral, and we were told there has been a place of worship here since the late 600s. So that's 1,400 years of continuity. But prior to that, it's believed that the basilica and forum would have been in this location right here, the administrative center of that Roman city. And that likely gives us the first major clue as to our lack of Roman stuff here in Winchester. Let me explain. So, those buildings have yet to be found, and if we do want to find them, then we need to dig here. I guess that is highly unlikely, but if we assume that to be true, that lack of continuity tells us that once the Romans left this place for 10 CE onwards, this city didn't continue. If it did, I guess then we have seen 1,400 years of continuity of worship back at Tanner Street, where we were with the temple, okay? So that's hint number one as to why we can't find anything Roman yet that survives. I'm now casting my thoughts towards the walls because there are a lot of walls here. Are we sure there's nothing left for us to see other than that one small part at the start? And if not, why would that be? They would have had obviously walls around the town, and off of the stone from those walls would then get taken and put in other buildings. So you might find Roman stone in buildings nearby. Old Roman buildings were basically used as quarries by medieval people, so the stone from them would have been used in the surrounding areas. So a lot of Roman stone means there were a lot of Roman buildings. So we have the continuity that this medieval wall here, all the huge amounts of medieval will do line up very well with it. So we have that continuity. But is that true? Are we seeing no other evidence whatsoever of Roman wall here? Like so many other cities, we've got bits and pieces left. Well, just up ahead, there is a bit of a patchwork quilt, but I am not sure how qualified I am to see if there is any of that is Roman. Perhaps I'll leave that up to you. This section here could be part of the Roman wall with the original facing. As you can see, it is quite high quality stone in traditional rectangular blocks. It's got some concrete between it which might be Roman concrete, the section of Roman. The wall that you find in this alcove here is not what would be the full Roman wall. And what it looks like, the Romans were very big on their aesthetics and quality, and the wall would probably have had some stone facing quite similar to the stones that we see here. The core in there is because the flint nodules are a very common building material found in this area, and it is a known building technique that places would have a wall which had some nice facing stones, but a cheap core that was made of flint and in concrete. The fact that this isn't set into the city wall shows that it is the core, not the whole wall. So when they left, why did they vanish, or did they even vanish? Well, we know that the Romans left Britain in the early 5th century, and it is possible that by the end of the 4th century they were starting to think about leaving. So that's when we get the building of the final defensive structure here at Winchester. But they didn't just pick up and leave. They left a city behind. And what happened to them? Well, the answer is quite simple. They vanished, and I mean that quite literally. Over the centuries, the rubbing out of Roman walls means that many Roman walls had disappeared down to ground levels. And today, a lot of Roman structures can only be found by their foundations. With Winchester being abandoned after the Romans left the UK, this meant that it was an absolute free-for-all for people to come in and use the Roman stone to build their own structures. As a result, Any future walls as built by people like King Alfred when he came in a few hundred years later may have used the foundations that were there, but it would not have used the original Roman stone because that was all gone. Hence, you don't get the same multi-layer, multi-period structure of walls in Winchester as you do in some other places, because it had to be entirely built from scratch. So, whatever happened after that Roman period, well, we see King Alfred in the latter 9th century repairing these walls. The ever-looming threat of the Vikings meant that he didn't need to reinvent the wheel. He just redeployed in the form of the freshly continuity placed walls that were already kinda there. And the medieval period preserved that defensive line and are rebuilt again in the 12th century, and perhaps later again in that medieval period. This deliberate continuity of alignment effectively transformed Winchester into a formidable Anglo-Saxon but anchored upon Roman engineering and demonstrating the enduring logic of its original layout. Well, it turns out it's true. There's very little Roman here to see. Over 350 years of Roman rule and nothing really tangible that we can sort of learn and understand from in a visible way. That city remains hidden under these streets for tomorrow's archaeology. And of course, perhaps as Penny mentioned earlier, this tells us a lot about the transitions from Iron Age to Roman and from Roman to the Dark Ages. But that line remained, and I have never ceased to be amazed. Despite its hugely obvious nature that the shape that we see things today are based on a notion of a handful of people, perhaps from over 1,000 years ago. Across the centuries from the Roman Vena Balderam to King Alfred Esper to medieval times, continuity has carried on right now until what we see today, even when the walls themselves actually vanished. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Time Will Tell. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you enjoyed seeing these incredible pieces of history brought to life. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with your friends if you loved it. Catch you next time on Time Will Tell.